Each autumn, Mexicans celebrate a holiday called Days of the Dead. It's a time when the dead are said to return to be with their families once again in graveyards. The holiday is serious and sad, humorous and satirical, all at the same time. And to understand Days of the Dead, you have to know something about Mexico's history and culture. Mexican culture comes from two powerful driving forces. One is the ancient pre-Hispanic heritage. It's always there. The other influence comes from the Spanish, who conquered Mexico and brought Christianity, along with their culture and their language. Days of the Dead is a holiday that reveals just how mixed, or mestizo, Mexican culture is. And nothing tells the story of Mexico's heritage better than the history of its foods. So it truly can be said that everything Mexicans are and what they eat are gifts from the ancestors. I'm Bruce Craig. I'm a professor who studies and teaches the history of food and cultures. And that means exploring the peoples and places from which they come. Celebrated, we traveled through the state of Puebla. Its villages preserve old customs and some of the most historic foods. Our journey began near the town of Acatalan in Puebla's northern mountains. A cloud forest still covers this part of the Sierra Madres chain. This is what Mexico's primeval landscape looked like before heavy deforestation. It rains some 215 days each year. That and the warm climate make for the classic highland jungle. Days of the Dead is a holiday that links the past with the present. The festival begins in homes, spreads out into public places, and eventually ends in cemeteries. Days of the Dead is an old harvest festival. After all the crops have been gathered, the year officially dies. Christians in old Europe called the holiday All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. In English-speaking countries, it was called All Hallows' Eve or Halloween. In most cultures around the world, this is the time to remember the ancestors. In Mexico, the holiday is really 1 week long. All during Days of the Dead, families clean and decorate the graves of their departed relatives. All are preparations for the return of the dead on the night of November 1st. And when they do return, they'll be welcomed with food, songs, and dances. In this dance, children from Acatalan rehearse the famous Dance of the Santiagos. It tells the story of St. James, a famous Spanish hero who slays wicked enemies with his sword. Red masks represent the demons. They're called Piltis, or Judases, and they represent the evil dead. The story may be Christian, but the interpretation is native Mexican. Acatalan is a very old market native to the jungles of the country and the symbol of a powerful ancient god, Quetzalcoatl. A vegetation god, he was said to be responsible for the rains that bring abundant crops. Quetzalan's market is famous, and it's a living history lesson. Indigenous peoples from all over the mountain areas have been trading in here for more than 500 years. The main groups are the Nahuas and the Totonacs. Our guide in Mexican cuisine was Chef Dudley Nieto. A native of Puebla, he loves to eat and prowl the markets.
So this is when you have a bad experience and it's, you get scared. So this is like for the nerves, actually.
Let's buy this.
Espinosilla. ¿Cuánto cuesta el? Un peso.
Un peso? Un momentito.
Este es para la bilis.
Para bilis.
¿Cómo se llama?
Hierba maestra.
Oh, this is yerba maestra.
Hierba maestra.
This is for bailos, when you have, you get upset like you always get. This is good for you.
Okay.
So esta le llamamos yerba mora.
Sí, hierba mora. Sí.
Y es bueno para los riñones.
Sí, es bueno
For
para
the kidneys. This is good for the kidneys.
Now, having cures for all of our physical and psychic dysfunctions, we continued on our journey.
To infuse and to get some flavors out.
So you crush cinnamon in your hands? Oh, it smells great.
See?
Oh, jeez.
So what we do is we always crush it before it goes in.
Yeah.
So
But you can just do it with your
some
hands.
of the flavor will come out. See?
Yeah.
As you notice. See? As long
Like
as you
this.
crush it.
Like this.
Good. See? The flavor is coming out. Pretty strong.
Oh, it's fantastic.
See? Great.
Cinnamon is one example of Mexico's mixed food history. It's not a native spice, but was brought by Spaniards from India. Chiles, tomatoes, corn, and beans are all native plants, and they're the basis of Mexican cuisine. Spaniards spread these Mexican foods around the world. Tomatoes transformed Italian food, and vitamin-rich chili peppers all came from Mexico. These high food value plants revolutionized world diets, leading to population explosions and better health. In this way, ancient Mexico gave the gift of life to many nations. Cactus is also one of these gifts, and so is the guajolote, or domesticated turkey. The turkey that appears on American holiday tables is really a descendant of the Mexican turkey, and this is what the fowl ancestor really looks like. Quetzalan Sunday Market has always been held in the town center, but occasionally something special and very ancient also occurs here. A huge pole stands in the church square, and like the church, it's used for ceremonial purposes. The pole is about 60 feet tall, almost reaching to the top of the church tower. The ceremony is called the Dance of the Voladores, which means the Dance of the Flyers. The tradition in Quetzalan is carried on by the Ramirez family. They have an informal school where ancient dance and song is taught. The Voladores ceremony comes from the Totonac people. It's probably at least 1,000 years old, and it honors the gods who were responsible for the year's agricultural cycle. That is, the well-ordered rotation of the year. The dancer standing on the pole is the sun. He turns 4 times to recognize the 4 cardinal directions of the cosmos. The 4 flyers are the seasons of the year. They also represent the substances that make up the world: air, earth, fire, and water. The flyers twirl 13 times as they descend. The meaning is this: 13 times 4 equals 52. That's the exact number of years in a cycle of the old sacred calendar of the Totonac people. In this region of the Sierras, the Ramirez family are the only keepers of the ancient dance of the voladores ritual. Produce for Quetzalan's market comes from the rich highland jungles. Jose Luis Mora has a plantation nearby. Well, it's more a tangle of jungle than a plantation, but it shows what the old natural mountain environment was like, with a few friendly European immigrants, like geese. Some of the native wildlife is not so friendly, so you always have to carry anti-venom serum. Senor Mora's plantation is irrigated by fresh, pure mountain water, and his cash crop is coffee. Coffee was first grown and used in Arabia. It became popular in Europe and the Americas in the late 1600s. Arabica is the best variety, and that's what Senor Mora grows. In Mexico's mountains, it's called Alto. Not all the Sierras are jungle. Traveling further south from Quetzalan, open landscapes begin to appear. Like Quetzalan to the north, the town of Zacapoaxtla is also a regional market, only this one's a little more modern. On Wednesdays, the whole town becomes a street market. It's so crowded that you can't just drive up and shop. Symbols of the holiday are beginning to appear. Skeletons. Some are made out of wood, others are a famous Mexican art form, paper cutouts. But we came to Zacapoaxtla in search of a very famous regional foodstuff. And it took a while to find it. Her, actually. Maria Mora Sosa.
No esperábamos.
Every day she sits in her house with her girlfriends discussing the goings-on in town. They know everything in town because Senora Mora has a constant stream of visitors. Customers, actually. Now in her 80s, Senora Mora has been making and selling homemade liqueurs for more than 60 years. She continues an old family tradition. Locally made liqueurs are a specialty of the mountains, but everyone swears that Maria Mora's are the best.
It's made out of what?
Blueberry.
Blueberry. Different kind of blueberry.
Yes.
Well, it tastes a little like blueberry, and a little like, tastes like blueberry and raspberry. It's very sweet.
Very good, isn't it?
Oh, it's excellent.
That's gonna be the...
A ver.
Elotes calientitos no compran.
No.
Aquí están los
Unos. Elotes.
The most renowned version of these liqueurs is a tonic called Xolispa. It's made from a large variety of healthy herbs, especially wild mountain oregano. That the ingredients happen to be steeped in 60 to 80 proof pure alcohol most likely adds to the curative powers.
A 300.
Sí, pero muy doloroso, muy doloroso. Luego se le acumuló sangre en los pulmones. Ama.
Gracias, señorita. Con permiso.
Los dos de mora.
These liqueurs can be made from almost any fruit. They're aged for long months, sometimes for years. Most are absolutely delicious. All her friends and customers agree that the liqueurs have highly beneficial qualities.
Pero de este no le dieron.
Es que se acabó ya.
On the steep sides of the Sierras, farmers plant their fields. Theirs are not the best lands because ages ago their ancestors were pushed into the less fertile mountains by Spanish lords. The digging stick is the oldest kind of agricultural tool, not just in Mexico, but around the world. Indigenous villages still dot the Sierras. The ways that people live haven't changed much over the past 5 centuries. This house is part of a tiny village called San Miguel. Places like San Miguel are often still self-sufficient. Almost everything people use in the village is still made there, by women. Wool thread is spun by expert fingers. They don't need machines or even spinning wheels to know when the thread is exactly right. Waist looms are still used to produce the women's woolen skirts, their serapes or shawls, and the wide embroidered belts that signify women's married status. The language of San Miguel is Mexica, a dialect of Nahuatl. It's the language of the ancient Aztecs, but now has many Spanish words mixed in. The pottery is made exactly the same way as prehistoric pots. Even shaping the pot with a corncob is the same. San Miguel welcomes visitors with old songs and a small dance, accompanied by food. This tradition goes back to pre-Hispanic times and was used to honor dignitaries and even the spirits of the ancestors during days of the dead. Cooks have learned their dishes from their mothers, who learned from their mothers, stretching back many generations. Their dishes haven't changed much over the centuries. Corn tamales with wood ashes flavoring, and a drink called pulque. Pulque comes from the maguey plant. Because the maguey takes many years to mature and flower, it's also known as the century plant. In ancient times, maguey was used for everything. The sharp tip of the plant and fibers were used as needles and thread. and the fibers were woven into cloth. Even the paper-like outer skin is used to wrap food for cooking. The maguey skin adds a subtle flavor to any dish. But it's the juice that's always been the maguey's most important product. The heart of the plant is scraped out and the sap or honey collects in the hollow.
Ahora sí. Ah, bueno.
The maguey can produce up to 2 liters of juice a day over several months. After the sap is siphoned out, it's allowed to ferment naturally into a potent alcohol. Pulque aficionados claim that the best varieties are made in villages.
Ah,
Hola, Armando, ¿cómo estás? Bien. This is pulque.
you first.
Pulque. This is good.
All the big city people warned us, don't drink the pulque. Urban folklore has it that it's not safe. But sometimes danger can intrigue the taste buds.
This is great.
In pre-Christian times, priests treated pulque as the drink of the gods, and only for their use.
You know, it's nice and tart. Sort of. It's sort of citrusy, but different tart. It's good.
It's very good, huh?
You can't describe it.
Yes, it's a different feeling.
Excellent. I think Armando should have some.
This for you.
Thank you.
No, you need some.
ustedes.
Aztec elites frowned on public drunkenness, but priests claimed that it helped them to enter another state of being.
I love this stuff. You kidding me?
This is different.
As we traveled across Puebla, we saw many roadside crosses and memorials. They mark the places where people have been killed in traffic accidents. One of the Days of the Dead celebrations is devoted entirely to them. A family is having a memorial built to a recently lost mother and child. Children are especially mourned, so 2 days during the week are set aside to remember them. The small city of Cholula stands in the fertile valley of Puebla, and above it is a volcano called Popocatépetl. In ancient times, it was worshipped as an awesome god, and now that it's become active again, it's feared for other reasons. Cholula has always been a religious center, and today has about 30 churches. The most spectacular church is San Pedro, which stands on a huge hill overlooking the town. The fields around San Pedro are famous for their marigolds, the flowers of the dead, the flowers of memory. Yellow marigolds called cempasúchil, which means flowers of 400 petals, are especially important for Days of the Dead. Because in the old religion, yellow was the color of death. It meant the south, where souls were thought to go. But these marigold fields hold another kind of treasure, tangible remains of the past.
You know, everywhere you go, there are artifacts. Pre-Columbian stuff. Right? Look. Oh, yeah. Hang on.
It's a pottery.
Look at that one.
Oh, wow. This is a very nice piece.
You've seen these before, right?
Yeah, it's when I was a kid. I used to came here, and you always find little, little things like this, small pieces of, I guess, pottery.
Well, this is sort of disposable stuff from pre-Columbian times, right?
What is this? This is like.
That is an obsidian blade, dudes, and it's look at these two.
Huh.
Look. They're wonderful cutting tools. You know better than I, because you use them in your kitchen, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
used to kill the chickens with this.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, it's your pre-Columbian kitchen, right.
When the Spanish arrived in Mexico, they knew that one of the best ways to conquer a people is to control the way they think and feel about the world. And religion is a way to do it. The Spanish built their churches right over the sites of pre-Hispanic temples. The Church of San Pedro is not on a natural hill. It's on top of the largest pyramid in all Mexico. Spaniards destroyed Cholula's pyramid temple in 1519, and with it a great civilization and almost all of the ancient religious ideas. The ruins tell us about that civilization with influences from all over Mexico. These early connections are seen in its architecture, and one of these is Talud Tablero.
And it came from Teotihuacan, a great civilization north in the Valley of Mexico. Once these panels were filled with sculptures, but they disappeared over the ages. The archaeologists who reconstructed this site put these in as a reminder, well, maybe an actual reconstruction of what those panels might have looked like in real life.
Cholula was more than just a temple. It was a temple city with many buildings. But not all the architectural history of Cholula is so obvious. Archaeologists have discovered that the pyramid is really three, each one built on top of another at different times. The oldest pyramid dates to about 200 BCE. Cut by archaeologists, these tunnels are remarkable. They're 3.5 miles in length. You're walking right through a vast man-made hill. Cholula's pyramid mound is the length of 4 football fields on each side.
Well, look what we've discovered. It's about a 1,000-year-old market. This thing down here. People from all over Mesoamerica, from all the regions, came here to trade and to talk and to gossip and do what people do in markets. They brought their woven goods and a lot of foods. Chiles, frijoles, guajolotes, that's one of the few domesticated birds they had, the turkey, and a lot of other things. It's a fantastic place. Can you imagine what it was like, how colorful it must have been? Well, we're going to find a more recent one. Something like it, but something more recent.
500 years ago, Cholula's market was outdoors. Today it's indoors, still colorful, and still one of the best in the state of Puebla. It's also a destination dining place for those who know where to find some great home-style dishes.
Gracias. Okay, Bruce.
What is this?
Cecina.
This is the raw. Well,
It's a very tender. It's a very tender meat.
is this raw when it's cooked?
It's raw when it's cooked, and it has to be like like medium rare. But taste it. It's very good. It's like salty.
This is the way you eat it?
Yeah.
Okay. It's cured though. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's good.
Oh,
Isn't it good?
very salty.
Tell you. I know.
It's like salty. It's like sort of like jerky beef.
Jerky beef.
Jerky beef, but cooked. Well,
How about you try? We tried this.
what?
Well, it's the stomach of the lamb. That is, of course, it's a stuff, and it's cooked with spices and chile. So you have to taste it. It's very good. Very tender. What do you think? Huh?
Sounds
Very
terrible,
good.
but tastes great.
It tastes like barbecue.
Tastes like barbecue.
That's what it is. See?
No, except I see little pieces of intestine in there.
Exactly. But then you see some pieces of the chili.
Stuffed sheep intestine is a European dish. Europeans brought sheep, pigs, cows, and even chickens to Mexico. But Europeans never even heard of chilies before they came to Mexico. Chilies are the defining ingredient in Mexico's food. They come in more than 100 varieties, and each one has its own heat index. But the most intense flavors come from chilies that have been dried. The hidden culinary treasure here is the gigantic blue corn quesadilla filled with wheat lacoche.
Yes. Okay, Bruce. Hope you like this.
It's all black.
Yeah, I know. It looks black.
All right, all right, all
Go
right.
ahead.
Wheat lecoche is actually corn rust, rot, found on ears of corn in the wet season. If you can ignore its looks and that it's rotted, the black fungus tastes earthy, and it's often called the Mexican truffle. Mixed with melted cheese, a European import, it's the perfect union of two food traditions. If Cholula was the ancient religious and market center, the nearby city of Puebla is the modern one. Puebla de Los Angeles, the capital, was founded by the Spanish in 1530. Puebla is one of the best preserved colonial cities. Religious symbols are found everywhere, in almost every aspect of everyday life. But being religious doesn't mean that you don't have a sense of humor. The images of death that appear during Days of the Dead season are meant to be ironic. The art reflects political and social themes, and it's often satirical. This kind of art grew up around the turn of the 20th century. It was invented by the great illustrator José Guadalupe Posada and made popular by the murals of Diego Rivera. Art is important for Days of the Dead. The Castillo family of Izúcar de Matamoros are among the most celebrated ceramic artists in all Mexico. The children learn the art from their parents. Like their formal schooling, this long apprenticeship in the home workshop prepares them for careers in the arts. One of the things that distinguishes the Castillo's art is the vivid colors used in their work. The colors are all made on the spot from natural ingredients, in much the same way as the pre-Hispanic artists did. The red color actually comes from a beetle called cochineal. This little insect was one of the few animals domesticated before the Spanish arrived. It was used not only for paint and dyes, but in food as well. Figurines often poke fun at all the things people think are serious. It's as if to say, in the end, despite our pretensions, we're all equal. Equally serious, equally foolish, and equally dead. Once upon a time, in the days when humans were sacrificed to the gods, the skeletons were real. Luckily, today they're made of candy. The Quintana family of Puebla City are among Mexico's best sugar skull makers. The artists pour the melted sugar into pre-made molds. When dry, the skulls are removed and are ready for decorating. Floral designs are common, and the skulls usually have tear streaks. The Quintana brothers say that's because the dead are sad. The skulls are finished by putting customers' names on them. That's to remind them of their own mortality. It is said that the dead cry because they miss everyday life. Especially they mourn for the food that they can no longer enjoy. Even simple churros would make them happy. And so would the delicious breads of the season. But there's one special dish that all the ancestors would die for.
Poblanos, the citizens of Puebla, like to say that real Mexican cuisine was born in their city. And that's reasonable because Puebla has always been a meeting place for peoples from all over Mexico and the Old World. So it's no accident that the greatest Mexican dish of all, the most mestizo dish, was born here.
That dish, mole poblano, which means mole from Puebla, is said to have been created in one of the city's convents by nuns. The legend goes that some 300 years ago, the abbess and the nuns of this Domenica house invented mole poblano. They did it to honor a visit by a very special guest, the Viceroy of Mexico. After many days of contemplation, the nuns came up with the perfectly Mexican solution. This original creation would make the convent famous. The reason mole poblano was the Mexican solution is that it's a mixture of Mexican and European ingredients, up to 25 in all, but also with a touch of bitter chocolate. Chocolate originated in Mexico and it was once reserved for gods and kings. It was added to the recipe as a culinary gesture to the viceroy. The viceroy and nobility are long gone, but the great dish made for them lives on. In fact, Poblanos will tell you that nuns still make the best moles. Next to their mothers, of course. Mole poblano is labor-intensive. To do it correctly takes up to 3 days. The final flavor is difficult to describe because of its different levels of complexity. It's rich, slightly sweet, and spicy hot. The word mole comes from the Nahuatl language and means simply sauce. So moles can be made from any number of ingredients. One of the best is pipián, made with ground pumpkin seeds. Good restaurants will have 3 main varieties of mole: pipián verde, pipián rojo, and mole poblano. During Days of the Dead, mole poblano is the favorite dish in all Puebla. The historic way to make moles at home is in clay pots called cazuelas. Traditional cazuela making is a dying craft. There aren't many independent makers left. This cooperative may be the last in the city of Puebla. Like the long process in making mole, there's a very long process in making cazuelas. The pots are fired once. Some are then decorated with a thin, liquid clay called slip. Others receive a glaze. The finished pots will be piled into a kiln and fired again to make them fully fireproof. The kiln is more than 100 years old, but Angel Cortez Campos, the head of the cooperative, says that cazuelas made in the old kiln are still the best for moles.
Hey.
The pots are carefully arranged so that each receives the correct amount of heat for its size. Once the pots are piled in, firing and cooling is an overnight process. Chicken or turkey smothered in mole is the traditional dish for the season. But for truly historic food, we had to try what ancient Mexicans ate and what poblanos today consider delicacies. But first, we had to catch them. Days of the Dead is breeding season for chapulines, or grasshoppers. In season, you'll often see hunters out in the fields capturing these little delectables. Insects are nutritious and almost all protein with very little fat. Grasshoppers are cleaner than pigs or chickens because they eat nothing but pure grass seeds. Grasshoppers can be found in markets and some of the best restaurants, such as the Fonda de Santa Clara.
Se va a tronar la cama. Filete tan pequeño.
They're cured in lime juice and then toasted before serving. Eating grasshoppers is not unlike eating shrimp with shells on. In fact, they taste like dried shrimp with lime juice. Grasshoppers weren't the only insects on the ancestral menu.
Mosquito eggs, yeah.
The mosquito eggs from the ahuatl mosquito.
Ahuatl, that's the Nahuatl word,
Exactly.
the ancient Indian word. Okay.
Especially it's one special mosquito that we use.
And-
Those are the eggs.
And
That's
this is?
the mosquito itself.
That's the mosquito? So they eat us and we eat them.
Exactly.
The mosquitoes and their eggs are not eaten raw, but mixed into a batter and made into croquettes.
Yeah.
And right here, see, this is the chinicuiles.
Chinicuiles, so they look like gusanos de maguey.
Exactly. They're gusanos de maguey, but these gusanos de maguey came from the leaves of the maguey itself.
Okay.
Very good.
Let me see. All right, I'm gonna do this. This is Mexicano style, right? They're really good.
Those are very good.
They are really good.
Meaty.
Meaty. It tastes like mezcal and bacon.
Gusanos de maguey are really larvae, and they're usually dried and cured. Other insect products require cooking. What look like small white jelly beans are really escamoles, or ant eggs. They come from a species of large red ant that lives in dry lands, and they can only be harvested in certain seasons. The usual cooking method is sautéing. They hardly need oil because they're naturally fatty. Escamoles have the texture and taste of what the ants feed upon, corn kernels. For thousands of years, insects have been part of the Mexican diet. But nowadays, they don't often appear on the special places where food is offered to the ancestors, on their altars. Almost every family sets up an ofrenda, or altar, for a family member or friend who has died. On the days just before November 1st, pathways made of marigold petals are laid down. Flowers are meant to lead the spirit of the dead into the house, up to their own altar. For the dead are said to be drawn by the sweet smell of marigolds and by their bright color. In homes, ofrendas are fairly serious, but in public places, ofrendas have a different character. They're a kind of public art, with all the sadness and humor that Mexicans invest in the holiday. For the climax of Days of the Dead, we headed to the most southerly part of Puebla, called the Hotlands, and with good reason. The land is dry for much of the year. We were going to the town of Acatalan. Here we would spend the ultimate night, in a graveyard. It's here that families gather to wait for the return of the spirits. Acatalan wouldn't be found on most tourist maps. We came here because the people still practice the old customs of Days of the Dead. Our friends in Acatalan said that the best cooks in town operated a small one-table restaurant. They did a good takeout business too. The menu was simple: tacos and pozole. Pozole is a soup that's made by boiling a pig's head for long hours. The soup is seasoned with chiles and herbs and then loaded with plump corn kernels called hominy. This being Thursday, Pozole Day in much of Mexico, of course we had to try it. All through the week-long festival, Acatalan's bakeries were busy preparing one of the holiday's special foods, pan de muertos, or bread of the dead. Bread of the dead comes in several forms. Some are round raised loaves. They're said to be the very shape of human souls. Other breads are flat. One, more like a large soft cookie, is shaped like a fat child with tiny arms folded on its body. The form comes from pre-Hispanic art. The yeast-raised bread is a European addition. As for the colored sugar, well, what better for the dead than the color of blood, the symbol of eternal life? Acatalan is mainly a farming community. Peanuts, honey, sesame, and pumpkins are all grown in the region and go into making various all-natural confections. In fact, these candies have made the town famous. Incidentally, the peanut is another native of Mexico. Some people still make candies at home. Jamoncillo, one of the best, is made with ground pumpkin seeds. It's really a Mexican version of marzipan. A respected member of the community has just died. A history teacher for many years in Acatalan's high school. His friends have built an ofrenda in his honor.
Hoy que te has ido tan lejos de mí, comprendo lo mucho que sufro por ti. Sin tu amor no puedo vivir, por eso te pido que vuelvas a mí. Yo quiero tenerte muy cerca de mí. Yo quiero besarte, ser solo de ti.
The family sets out the professor's favorite foods. And as an historian, that had to be mole poblano.
No puedo vivir, por eso te pido que vuelvas a mí.
All the preparations for the entire week have been leading to this night, when the dead finally return to be with the living, after midnight on November 2nd.
voy a traer las tijeras.
Just about everyone in Acatalan is at the cemetery tonight. They're prepared to stay up the whole night. And family members have come home from all across Mexico and as far away as the United States.
I think in this town is the original tradition, and in the cities the traditions are, how can I say, distortion, and this is the original, I think. I really like all this. I born in Mexico City, but all my family is here, and I really like it.
Vázquez, acá está Orlando Osorio Puebla, toda la familia, González Herrera, Brenda, la nivelada, falta el pan, la naranja todavía no. Luego darte la vuelta para que hoy tenemos les vamos a traemos café, tamales.
Dos cabezas.
De la tradición de los Todos Santos. A cada año acostumbramos a hacer estos tamalitos de cabecita de cerdo, muy sabrosos para las personas que gusten, o nosotros para toda la familia.
For those who haven't prepared their own food, there's plenty outside the cemetery for sale. Like families, food vendors are prepared to serve hungry and thirsty customers through the long night.
Mexican food, delicious.
The best.
And the magnificent. Whoa, my God.
Ideas and their symbols run deep into Mexico's past. Pre-Hispanic religions said that death was not the end of life. The bones of the dead were like seeds of corn. From them came renewed life. That's one reason why traditional Mexicans believed that the spirits of the dead really did return.
Adiós. Buenas noches. Adiós.
Clouds of burning incense smoke hang over the cemetery. In Mexico, the incense is copal. Copal is a pine resin that was used by all the pre-Hispanic peoples during their ceremonies. In some traditions, the smoke draws the spirits of the ancestors back. In others, it signals their departure.
Mientras esperamos la gloriosa venida de nuestro Salvador Jesucristo. Señor,
Con vosotros estáis, no le conocéis, con vosotros.
Just before dawn, the communion service is held. It's communion for the living and in memory of the departed. Memorials for the dead will continue through the next day. In the old days, when beliefs in days of the dead were more powerful than they are now, the elders of every family or group would end the ceremonies with a prayer, something like this.
Benditas ánimas que nos han visitado, perdónenos nuestras culpas.
Blessed souls who have come home, forgive us our misdeeds. Blessed souls who have shared our humble food, watch over us. Blessed souls, do not forget us, and return to us at this time next year.